Hi, everybody. This is Mike Manning, and I am this week's Man of the Hour. We talked about family. We talked about time to yourself. We talked about life as an artist. We talked about acting, producing, telling stories that you care about. And I hope you tune in.
Emmy award-winning actor and producer, writer, and activist, most commonly seen on NBC's Day of Our Lives. Mike Manning is now on the show right now. Dude, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Dude, we could have gotten into so many topics on this episode. But you take me as someone who redefines what it means to have zero limits. And you also take us as a hell of a persistent guy, at least from what we see on the screens. And I'm sure it's the same way off. And so those are the two topics I would love to start with you. And I guess on limitations, dude, I mean, the reason I wanted to bring it up first is because I feel like when you look at someone like you who's acting and not just acting, but writing, producing, and doing a lot of advocacy work as well, it kind of turns into this big portfolio of like an unlimited Mike Manning, right? And so how did all that come about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like the I've been following the breadcrumbs that the universe has sort of laid out for me. And when I trust my gut and when I just follow those breadcrumbs and trust that I'm on the right path, then things work out. And that's been true with acting, with producing, with writing, with activism, with everything that you just mentioned. It's sort of been the case where I work very hard. I try to surround myself
Mm.
with people that are smarter than I am. I try to be as honest and forthright and as possible, and then the right people just gravitate towards me, and the right projects just gravitate towards me.
I love that you mentioned breadcrumbs. That's I don't think that we've heard that. So like, when was the first time you felt like they were aligning for themselves? Because I feel like it should be the opposite for actors now.
Yeah, it's there have been a few times in my life where I felt like I was sort of off the trajectory that I should have been on, and there have been times where I feel like the universe picked me up and sort of put me back on the train tracks. One example was, I had in acting, so I had been doing theater since I was younger, and I always loved doing theater. I started doing theater when I was 13 years old. Before that, I would act out movies with my brother and my sister and my cousins. I've just always loved being an entertainer. And I was going to school for business. I was attending the University of Northern Colorado for business.
Mm.
And because my father was in business, a lot of my friends were, going into business, into investment banking, that sort of thing. So it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I didn't have any actors, professional actors in my orbit. So I didn't, my mind did not realize that you could make a living being a professional actor.
Mm.
So I was going to school for business, and it was my best friend that came up to me one day in the library and said, "Hey, Mike, you used to audition, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was a long time ago, sure." And we're studying for a business final. And he said, "Hey, there's an open casting call for a reality show called Real World. Will you come with me and essentially be my wingman?" And I said, what is Real World? I never even saw the show. And he said, "It's a reality show. I just want you to come on and help me get on the show." I go there, I meet the casting director, and I end up telling this perfect stranger all about my life and things that I was going through at the time that were positive and negative, because I never thought that I would see this person again. And this person was asking me very personal questions. And I said, this isn't going to go anywhere. I'll just be honest with you. And I ended up getting cast on the show. And what that did for me is it put me in front of the camera, and it put me back in line with entertainment. It also brought me to Washington, D.C., and gave me a taste of politics and activism, something that I've always been interested in from a young age. And, in school, I was a part of the Honor Society and the Red Cross and student government and organizing. And I really loved that stuff, but I just didn't know what to do with it. And so it was literally like the universe took me and said, "We're going to put you in this position, and you're going to get a little taste of entertainment. You're going to get a little taste of politics, and we're going to see what you do with it." And sure enough, I was on the season. I finished my 3.5 months with, 7 strangers picked to live in a house and have their lives taped and all that stuff. And what that did for me is I moved back to Colorado. I wasn't sure even then what I wanted to do. I thought about going into politics. A manager in Los Angeles found me on Facebook and said, "Hey, Mike, I saw you on Real World. I think that you have a great look. You should move out to Los Angeles. Give it 6 months." I said, "Okay." And that was almost 12 years ago.
You bring up a lot about taking chances right there when you think about it, right? When as you're telling that story, and this is why I always tell folks, I'm like, the second I ask one question, it kind of unfolds your entire narrative of the history of what you've built. Like, think about it. I mean, you mentioned the real world, and like some people you ask today don't even know what the real world is. You know what I mean? But if you ask them what Days of Our Lives is, right, you kind of like hit both of those territories, which is super, super cool. But the thing I was going to mention that you had brought up several times throughout telling that story is that there's almost like this pattern of taking chances. Who, like, I guess it's mainly actors that do this, but 6 months in LA just to like say yes to a stranger that saw you on the real world. So like, why did you take that chance and then many more after?
I think that at that point in my life, I knew that I I felt like I was claustrophobic in Colorado doing what I was doing. I felt that I needed to get out and do something else and move away from home and become my own person. I knew that I needed to do that, but I didn't know what that looked like. And so when this opportunity came to me, I took it as this again. This is the universe giving you a carrot. Follow that and see where it leads. And I think that what do they say? The greatest amount of progress happens your first step outside of your comfort zone. And I think it's like that first step is the scariest, but that
Mhm.
first step is what sets you on the path. And I know so many people that are working all the time and they go crazy and they're walking in circles. They don't have a direction. They're just working and working, and it's busy work because they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're unhappy and they're
Mm.
just walking in circles. And I knew that I didn't want to be that person. So I said, look, I'm going to move out to Los Angeles. I know one person. I'm going to pack up my car.
Who's
I'm
a
going to drive.
stranger?
Yeah, who's a stranger. I'm going to pack up my car. I'm going to drive out there and I'm going to see what happens. And I might fall flat on my face and I'll have some fun stories, or I might, I might be successful. Even if I fail, I'll at least know that I tried. And for me, it was balancing. Like, I didn't want to go the rest of my life wondering
Mm.
what if.
What if? I hate those two words together. I don't want to know what if. Let's just do it now. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? I was thinking too when we had thought to bring you on the show and we were like organizing your booking and putting on this like time calendar and all these things. I was like, of course, we're like inching the road to 100 episodes. Why not? Right? Why not bring Mike on the show to share his story and inspire folks? So you mentioned your best friend and this manager stranger that had reached out to you at some point and took you to LA. Well, not took you, but invited you to Los Angeles. Where's your best friend and that manager now?
My best friend is in Australia. He met a girl. He just had his second daughter, and he actually did visit me while I was on the show in Washington D.C. So he got his time on the show. I did my job. He said, "I want you to get me on the show." He didn't say how. He didn't say for how long. So I did my job, and then that manager unfortunately ended up being kind of strange, and we don't really talk anymore. So I
Got
don't
it. Okay, so publicity note, cutting that one out. But,
know.
Mike, I mean, the reason I ask you about your best friend is because I feel like you just never know whether your friends are in this business or not, right? Like in the line of work that you're doing, how much of an influence they may play, you know, into your professional life. But I want to go back to limitations for a second. So did you ever discover a point where you were like, I feel limited? And you kind of mentioned this about being claustrophobic in Colorado. But besides that, was there ever another point where you were like, I feel like I'm limited. I got to break through this ceiling?
Absolutely. I don't think maybe limited is the right word when I moved to Los Angeles, but I certainly felt ill-equipped and inadequate for this new career that I was trying to undertake. I moved here and I was immediately surrounded by some actors that had been doing this since they were children, some actors that had a certain level of success on Broadway, or they were beautiful models, or they were taller, or more handsome, whatever that was. And when I first moved here, it was very, very quickly I was sort of smacked in the face with thoughts like, why me? Why do I deserve this? Actually, it's funny. My first audition was for Power Rangers, and it was for the Red Ranger.
I could actually
And
see that casting happening, dude.
Thank you. So could I. Didn't happen. So, so
Welcome to Hollywood. No, I'm kidding.
well, it was my first audition, and I go there, and I had an audition, and I got a call back, and I went to the producers, and I signed a contract, and it would have been, I think, something like 8 months in New Zealand, and it was more money than I could have ever hoped for my first year in Los Angeles. And so I was like, wow, this acting stuff is easy. Everybody thinks it's so hard. It's easy. And then it was down to me and one other guy. He ended up getting it, and for the next essentially 5 months and 2 weeks, I had nothing. No, no callbacks, no traction, no bookings, nothing. And I remember my mom calling me because I'm kind of a mama's boy. And she calls me and she goes, "All right, sweetie. Well, you said 6 months. It's been almost 6 months. Like, are you gonna pack up your car? Are you gonna come home? We still have your room." She wanted me back in Colorado. And I said, "No, mom, like I said it was gonna be 6 months. I'm doing it, I'm giving it 6 months, and then we'll see what happens." And knowing now what I wait, knowing if I knew then what I know now, 6 months is nothing. 6 months is not enough time to make a career as an actor. But my being naive, thinking that it was 6 months, I was like, okay, mom, I said 6 months, I'm gonna stick to it. And it was 5 months and 2 weeks that 5 months and 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It was right before the 6 month mark. I booked my first film, and it was a small film, but it was enough to keep me in Los Angeles. It was enough to make me feel like I was on the right path. And I did that film, and then shortly thereafter, I booked another film and another film, and then a TV guest star on Hawaii Five O, and then a guest star on this Disney show called Crash and Bernstein, and then a bigger film, and very much started building my career from the ground up, by saying yes to the right opportunities. And now, like you mentioned, Days of Our Lives, doing a year on a soap opera was something that 12 years ago I never would have dreamed of, and I'm so grateful for that now. Having This Is Us on my resume, one of the number one shows in the world, and having that be airing right now in their final season, playing a character like the Manny, which is such a big part of the storyline, is really cool. And then having winning an Emmy for The Bay on Amazon Prime and Popstar TV last year, and then the year before, once as an actor and once as a producer. I never would have expected that in a million years. And being able to go up on stage and hold a golden statue and thank my mom and my dad and my friends and my grandparents that instilled, a wild imagination in me and everything else. Like, it was just, it really, really felt like everything was coming full circle, and I was exactly where I wanted to be and needed to be, and where the universe wanted me. And that has felt really good. It's also a very calming feeling, because now all of the time that I used to spend stressing about the next job or the next thing or the next whatever, I can use in helping other people that are trying to find their path. And right before this interview, I hopped on a Zoom with some people asking me about how to produce. And one of the people is actually a mentor of mine that's helped me so much. And to be able to spend an hour essentially teaching them, who have decades and decades of experience, but not as an entertainment producer, to be able to go and give back and sort of walk them through producing an indie film it's the best feeling in the world, because you're respected by your peers for being successful, but you're also able to then help others and give back and have the resources to really change somebody's life. And that's a really, really good feeling.
Yeah, it is, dude, because you're exactly where you're meant to be, like you had said. You bring up this calming feeling, and I don't think people can really be at that like oasis state in their career until they've actually hit enough milestones. I think for you, something I'm picking up on, and again, I'm not an empath here, I'm just like listening to you talk. But as I'm listening to you, I feel like there's so much here that and you had said this like before you got to this calm place of now being able to help people who had helped you, doing advocacy work, or be able to connect the dots about your career, right, as it's behind you, and all these great things have come to life. You then have to wonder, like, not only what got you there, which totally please allude to, but then also, as you look back with us now, was there ever a time that you feel like it was almost impossible to get that? And what were you telling yourself in those moments, especially at the 5.5 month year mark at the beginning?
Impossible to reach the period of calmness that you're talking about.
Yeah, or like get to a place where like everything is set.
Yeah, it was just I kept coming back to this feeling of I would rather risk everything and fall on my face and know that I did it, rather than go back or give up early and always wonder what if. And I'm not saying that some people, they come out to pursue entertainment and they end up starting a family or starting a business or starting doing other things, and some people are very happy doing that, and that's their path, and I'm not discounting that at all. There were times in my life where I thought I would stop entertainment and start a family. That hasn't happened, but I have two dogs, so they're my family. And I am married, luckily, so I found somebody to put up with me. But I sort of thought about it, and I was like, I would rather risk everything and fail and have a good story to tell my kids or somebody else, rather than not taking that chance, as scary as it might have felt. And it's also, there's something exciting. I was listening to not listen I was reading Matthew McConaughey's book Green Lights, and he talks in there about the most fulfilling parts of his career and the most creative parts of his career have been when he was hungry for something and he was going after that something, and when he had to fight for a role or fight to deepen himself creatively or fight to these things. And he said some of the most lonely and unfulfilling times in his life have been when he felt like he made it and he got lazy and he started doing nothing but romantic comedies because they were paychecks, and he felt creatively unfulfilled. And it was when he sort of, I think he went somewhere in the Amazon and spent like 3 months away and lived with like some tribe or some crazy story. And then he came back, and that was when he decided to do Dallas Buyers Club and really stretched himself for that role. And he said he's so happy that he did, because I think there's something to be said about the journey. So many people are focused on, oh, I have to achieve this, I have to check this box, I have to reach this destination. It's like, no, like the fun is getting there. The fun is, even now I get to wake up every day and I challenge myself. I'm like, man, yes, I want to do a studio movie where I play a superhero, or yes, I want to work with this director or this writer or this. And these are milestones that I give myself, because I want to remain hungry. I want to remain creative. I want to remain challenged. And every day I wake up and I'm enjoying the journey. It's not the destination, because I know as soon as I reach that destination, I'm going to take the flag and I'm going to move it a little bit forward.
Dude, thank you for sharing that. Can we have this podcast now? No, I'm kidding. Before we get to persistence, because the reason, I think they go hand in hand, right? Like everything you just said about moving this flag forward and kind of taking it one goal at a time, or maybe even changing your mind about goals. That's my next question. Have you ever like saw something and said, I want that, and then change your mind about it? And then how were you about that decision?
Yeah. So during COVID, we were all trying to find things to do. And one of the things that I did is there's it's the Science of Well-Being, I think is the name. It's a course at Yale, and it was so popular at Yale that they offered it to everyone for free. So you can go on Coursera and you can take this course, and it's a 10-week course, and it essentially teaches you how to make the most out of your happiness, out of your life. And one of the things that they said in there, they talked about this study with Olympic athletes, and they studied these Olympic athletes during the Olympics when they found out how they placed in terms of bronze, silver, gold medals. And it was across countries, across sports. They used pictures and interviews and footage of the ceremony and everything else. So what they found was the happiest athletes were obviously gold medalists. They worked hard, they got a gold medal, they're on the podium, they're accepting it, their hearts are full, they're like, they worked so hard. Those are the happiest. The second happiest are not the silver medalists, it's the bronze medalists, because their mindset is, I made it, I medaled, I'm up here on the podium, I'm so grateful to be here. All the other athletes aren't here. I made the top three. I have an Olympic medal. The silver medalists, they're too busy comparing themselves to the gold medalists. Oh man, if I was 1 second faster, if I jumped 1 inch higher, if I did this, I did this, I did this, I could have that gold medal. And instead I have a silver medal. And that stuck with me, because especially in entertainment, but I think all across industries, people consistently compare themselves to other people. And you see somebody with something, and you're like, man, I want that, I want that, I want that. And then you get it. And then you look across, you look to the left, and it's like, oh man, they have that. I want that, I want that, I want that. And it's like people that consistently don't compare themselves to the best version of themselves. They compare themselves to other people. They're never going to be quite fulfilled and quite happy. And that's something, and I'm not perfect. I'm still working on that. There are still things where I will try to, I will compare myself to other people, but I'm actively trying to do less of that. And as I do that, I'm finding that I'm more happy with the things I have, with the things that I achieve all across the board.
I'm going to ask you something this is coming from like my personal curiosity, although maybe people who are listening, I would assume you're also thinking this because you just brought it up. But when you are trying not to then compare yourself to people, I mean, you're an actor. So it's like it's same, right? Like anybody who wants to be an actor wants your titles and your bookings and your gigs and your films and your TV shows. And so when you're like trying to come out of the comparison, but then maybe potentially seeking role models and inspiration through people that you are looking at, how do you do that? What's that balance look like?
I've also produced my own films, and through that I've been on the other side of the camera. I've done casting sessions with other actors, and that was really beneficial for me to see, because I realized how non-personal the casting process is. Everybody that's a casting director or producer or whatever, they want to find the person for that perfect role. They're rooting for you. They want you to do well. They want you to be their answer for their film. And I saw so many actors that would come in and do amazing work, and we couldn't cast them. Either they looked too similar to somebody we already cast and we didn't want the audience confused if they were brother and sister, or if it's a romantic story, somebody was too tall, too short, there are so many things that go into it. And seeing that and realizing that was beneficial, because then I stopped comparing myself to other people, and I started saying, okay, what is the story that this team is trying to tell? Do I have a place in this story? I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to be the best version of myself I can be. If my little piece of the puzzle fits into their puzzle piece, great. If it doesn't, I will try to find something else that does. And as soon as I stopped taking it personally, it was much easier for me. Also, my friends are actors, and it's very easy to have that sort of jealousy component. You talked about Days of Our Lives. So a long time ago, I say a long time ago, but maybe
Yesterday.
5 years ago, I don't know, whatever it was. But there was one of my best friends. He and I went out for the same soap opera. And it's interesting. And he's an established actor. He's a TV actor. He's on a series right now. And so I called him. The character, the audition, the character had a very specific jacket on, and he had one of these jackets. And I said, I'm at the mall shopping for a jacket. I can't find it. I call him and I say, hey man, can I borrow your jacket tomorrow for an audition? I have a network session where it's like down to me and like two other guys, and it's going to be a contract role, a 2-year role on the soap opera. I want to do it. Can I please borrow your jacket? And he's sort of quiet on the other end, and he's like, Mike, what show are you going out for? And I was like, The Young and the Restless. And he goes, so I would let you borrow my jacket, but I'm using it for the exact same audition tomorrow. It's you and me and one other guy. And I was like, oh no. And that it, and he ended up getting it, and I didn't get it. But he's my friend and I love him. And if it was going to go to anybody, I would rather it go to him than some stranger. But that was a moment where I sort of had to check my own self and check my jealousy and say, look, I gave the best version of the audition that I could have. If I'm not what they were looking for, at least my friend was, and I'm happy for him, and sort of on to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, and then that's kind of like the lens you would have to have, which is a very mature one. We've seen it all the time. Like, it doesn't matter who your friends are, what business you're in, but sometimes it's like you kind of see that they're, doing this such things that are so similar that you're kind of looking at it and you're like, yeah. But at the same time, you can then be happy for folks too, which is exactly the story you told us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'm really, I have a little brother. We're 3 years apart. We grew up in a competitive household where we would always try to be better than each other or in sports or games or whatever. So I definitely get what competition feels like. And I think some level of competition is fun and healthy. But again, it's about where you find your happiness. And if you find your happiness comparing yourself to other people, that is going to be short-lived and it's going to cause problems.
That's exactly right. I keep saying persistence, but I also feel like you've brought it up so many times in the answers you've already shared with us. So then I'm just going to move right along, Mike. How do you describe Mike Manning away from the screen? I feel like that's where we've seen you. It's where I mean, I looked at your press kit, your media kit, everything, and I'm like, this is Hollywood Mike. What does Mike look like outside of that? Describe him to us.
Uh, Mike outside of Hollywood is much more shy, much more introverted. I like to spend time with my dogs. I like to spend time in nature. I have a pool and like a little garden kind of thing, so I do that. I go hiking or camping or to the beach as much as possible. I love being outside. I love games. I love
Mhm.
game nights. I'm a big COVID was fine for me because
He was
I
like,
would
freedom
invite,
by myself.
yeah, I'm like by myself with my dogs. I'm fine. I would have like little pockets of friends that were all sort of isolating together. And so we would have game nights and,
Mhm.
in groups of like 5 or 6 or whatever. And my game cabinet, I have a game cabinet and it went from like 7 games to like
Mhm.
35 games over the course of the pandemic. So, yeah, that's it. I read, I'm trying to read more. I used to read a lot and I've just been so busy that I've sort of stopped doing that. So I'm trying to read more. I'm trying to write. I just found out yesterday that one of my scripts that I co-wrote is going to be distributed by a big studio. So that's really exciting. We're actually going to start filming that next month. So that's a huge deal for me because I've never written a script that's been sold before, and the fact that it is like really really cool. So yeah, that's basically it. That's me. I work out. I go to the gym, and that's sort of I put my headphones in. I turn music on. I go to the
Mhm.
gym and work out, and that's sort of like my hour of therapy. I just have time with myself. I just think
Yeah.
about things. Yeah, so that's really important.
Hell yeah. We'll go back to the gym note in a second because I don't think a lot of people use it as therapy, which is interesting. So I want to tap your brain on that. But you mentioned the word introverted. That was one of the first things you had said, which is like literally almost every actor that we know, everybody we've brought on this show, every musician, there's some level of introvertedness of their personality that they always discuss when I ask them, a little bit more about their personal life. This is a two-parted question here, but do you think that that is more common now for entertainers to be quite introverted, and why? I guess like away from the screen. And then the second question, Mike, is for you, when did you decide that you were an introverted person away from acting?
I think I've become more introverted by necessity. I think actually my life as an actor has made me more introverted away from work because so as an actor, so much of my life is out there and on a screen or at an event, on a carpet, being interviewed, hoping I don't say the wrong thing or hoping I don't trip and fall on my face or hoping that I, go and talk to this director and I impress them enough to have me a part of their film or so much of my life is being on and sort of being available to other people that outside of work, I have to spend time with myself alone, quiet time to sort of refill the tank. One of my, a message that stuck with me in one of my acting classes early on was that you can't pour from an empty cup. And as artists, we need to constantly find ways to refill that cup so that we are bringing our full selves to every situation. And you can't do that if you're not spending time with yourself, if you're not taking time to just have those quiet moments and just rest and recover and be alone.
Mic drop. Well, I'm just gonna drop this one. Ready? And on the gym note, I was like, I'm gonna just throw it through the freaking
Yeah,
carpet. York shirt. Mike, you mentioned like then kind of treating the gym session as your therapy. An hour is a perfect amount of time, by the way. I think people spend too much time in the gym, which if you need it, great. But an hour is great. What do you do therapeutically throughout the gym session that helps you? kind of like I guess it wouldn't be recovery. This is more so just like time to oneself.
Yeah, yeah. I'll listen to music and I'll listen to like music, like heavy music, when I'm working out with weights, or I'll listen to like calming music, or like John Denver when I'm like running, like jogging or just walking, or sometimes I'll just walk really fast. I'll put it on like four or whatever, and I'll just walk and I'll just kind of daydream and just sit there and just like allow my brain to just organize all the files up there, and just sort of daydream. Um, because why not? And I think that also like the endorphins that it releases. If I had a bad day, or if I had a bad meeting, or if I just got dropped off this project or something, I'll go to the gym and I'll work out, and I'll at least know that like today I improved myself physically. Like I didn't stand still today. At least I got a good workout in. At least I can check that box. And because you wake up one way and you go to sleep one way, and it's like you either became a better person during the day, or you stayed the same, or you became worse or whatever. And it's like, I just choose to have the gym as be one of those things where if I go there, I feel accomplished. I feel like I improved myself a little bit. Um, and I also love lyrics. I am not a musician. I wish I were. And I love listening to songs with really interesting lyrics that kind of tell a story, because then I get to like daydream a little bit and be in that other person's head. And a lot of like good lyrics are like poetry. And why do you read a poem? Because you want to feel something. Why do you listen to a song? Because you want to feel something. You want to see yourself in those words and in that song. And so when I get to go on those little mini journeys at the gym, I keep my phone with me, and I'll like take notes sometimes of like TV ideas or movie ideas, or just quotes or lyrics or thoughts or whatever that I have. And even if I never go back and read them again, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like that. I want to remember that. And I just have this like little gym journal that I just keep sometimes. And it's just something just for me.
Something just for you is right. I mean, you not only just validated the 4.0 walk, I do the same exact thing. But if you're listening to this, you've pretty much validated anybody who can kind of like daydream while at the gym and successfully not drop a dumbbell on their head.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not gonna lie and say I haven't dropped a dumbbell,
Yeah.
but I try my best.
Can we talk about your mom for a sec, man? You said you were a mama's boy. Why is that? Or why do you think that is? Are you the older brother?
I'm the oldest, yeah. And I'm a mama's boy. I mean, I'm close with my whole family. And my family, I'm the oldest of three, so I have a brother and a sister. And growing up, we were always like a really tight knit family. I've seen my parents both work tremendously hard. My dad started out as a store manager, and over the years, I saw him work his way up to being. At one point, he was the vice president of Quiznos, like Quiznos subs, and their home office was in Colorado, so that's why it was in Denver. And he would always be, even when he was running his restaurants, if there was a light bulb out in the bathroom, he would be the one to change it. And if something happened, he would be the one to fix it or whatever. And I've seen him go from having no college education, no money in his bank account, to being a successful businessman, successful father, patriarch of the family. And that's always instilled in me. Like you mentioned, that perseverance. Like I think I get that 1,000% from my father. I think my mother, she's amazing, and she's so full of love. As a family, we've overcome some sad moments, some traumatic moments, and which I think in the grand scheme of things have brought us closer together. And my mother, I've seen her really improve herself in a way that makes her just she's like love letters in the lunchbox, and like let's all get together and take a family picture at Christmas, and here I got you an extra this. She's so kind and so thoughtful, and I think I get that from my mom. She's compassionate, and she is somebody that uh really tries to make the most of life, and really she'll take risks, and she'll fall on her face sometimes, but it's like, but at the end of the day, she knows that she went for it and she did it. And I think that I get that sort of adventure mentality from my mom. So it's a little of both. And my grandparents too, they're wonderful. My grandmother, my mother's mom, she and I were very close. Unfortunately, she passed away recently, but we were very close. And like she was just such an amazing woman, and she always would encourage me. She would like buy me costumes, and sometimes I would stay at my grandparents' house when my parents were working or whatever, and she would buy me costumes, or she would buy me props for my to act out like my little movies. And she always encouraged me to use my imagination and to never feel weird about it or anything. And so when I got the Emmy from the Bay, and I got to go on stage and accept that, like she was the first person I thanked, and I put the statue up in the air, and I was like, "This is for you, Graham." And sorry, I'm getting a little teary eyed. And that was like a really cool feeling too, because to acknowledge, you know, she was a stay at home mom her entire life. She had so many kids, and by some standards, it was like, oh, she, you know, she was just a mom, but
Mhm.
like she wasn't just a mom. Her the impact that she left on everybody that she touched was just phenomenal. Quick story. So I had a surprise birthday party here at my house, and my mom and my sister flew out to surprise me, and they brought my grandmother. And I had maybe 40 people here, surprise party, 40 50 people. We're all in my backyard. And before I knew it, there was my grandmother was sitting at a table, and there was a line of people waiting to talk to her, and they each had a glass of wine in their hand. They had red wine, and it was almost like like somebody would get up from the table, and then somebody else would sit back down and give my mother and my grandmother a glass of wine, and then they would talk. And she held court for 3 hours. And it was just a line of people, and I was like, what do you guys, I walked over, I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they're like, we're waiting to talk to the Graham, like the Graham, because she goes by Graham, but they're like, we're ready to talk to the Graham. And just, you know, she was just like an amazing person with amazing stories and compassion. And um I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but she was awesome.
She was awesome. That's all you needed to tell us, with that story too. Or sorry, that's all we needed to hear is that she was awesome, man. That I completely respect that. And then that's the thing about family. Sometimes you think about it, you're like, damn, you don't really realize like the home you grow up in is essentially what's going to really keep you grounded through, especially what you're doing now. What are they saying, or what would you have hoped your Graham would be saying now? And then for your parents too, what do they tell you?
Um, they tell me that they're proud of me. They tell me that they're happy that I went for it and am doing my thing. Of course, when I first moved here, my parents were they were a little scared for me. They didn't know any actors. They didn't know anybody in entertainment. My mom thought I was going to be a lawyer because I always seemed to talk back growing up, and my dad thought I was going to be a
Funny.
doctor because I love medicine and I have terrible handwriting. So they both thought they're like, Mikey is going to be either a lawyer or a doctor. And
You could play
yeah,
those.
well, I can play those now, and I was neither of those things. And for the first couple years, they kept asking, "Are you moving back home? Are you moving back home? Like, did you do your thing?" And then I remember it was as soon as I did a Disney movie called Cloud Nine. It was a Disney snowboarding movie, and the DVDs came out, and my mom was so proud and so, happy. They came out to visit me on set in Utah during this movie, and I got to show my family what I was doing on this big movie. And when the DVDs came out, my mom sent me a box and had me sign them for all of her friends, her coworkers, I think some of my little cousins, my grandma, everybody. And like I'm sitting here signing a box of these DVDs for her. And she was like, Mike, I'm really proud of you. And she was like, I think you made it. And I was like, oh, like that's gratifying to hear that, and to, to know that she's proud of me.
Yeah, and that goes to what you were just saying about her personality, where she would kind of go that extra mile and, hey, like, let's take a family Christmas photo. Hey, sign 50 of these,
Yeah,
I was gonna say DVDs, right? Like back, I mean, they don't even, you go into Target and Walmart nowadays, and I guess they still have those out, but to be on one was a huge deal back then. You know what I mean? Or to like have a movie that was on one and people would get to go replay it. It's not like Netflix where you just click play. We're almost desensitized to the impact, that an actor's face can have, that we consistently see. You know what I mean? Nowadays. And then lucky, like you had said, your shows are still on, and it's super, super fascinating. As those come up, I mean, I want to go back to this introverted note for a second here. I mean, when you are in public, and I've just heard this a couple of times from actors we've had on the show, when you're noticed and recognized, what does that interaction typically look like?
I think that, well, typically I try to be a kind person and I try to take pictures with fans or talk to them or get to know them. I have a natural curiosity for people. I was just actually having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day. Growing up, we would always take those Myers-Briggs leadership tests or whatever in
Yeah.
school, and I would always get my like highest scoring thing was curiosity, and I would always be like, "What the heck is this? What everybody else gets social skills and leadership and confidence and like intelligence and everything," and I'm like, curiosity. What is this? I like what am I going to do with that? And now as I get older, I respect that even more because I genuinely have a curiosity for people and I love meeting people and talking to people and getting to know them. I also, when I'm studying for a character, I have a curiosity of that character and the script and the world and everybody a part of it. And it's almost like when you leave your house and you come back and your dog acts like they haven't seen you in a week and it's been 5 minutes and their tails wagging, they're so happy and everything. Like that's how I approach most of my projects. It's like every project I get excited and I'm like it's almost like it's my first project, and I sort of try to approach life that way. And when I meet people, as long as they're respectful, there have been people that and I've done this too, where I'll be at a restaurant and I just took a bite and somebody's like, "Hey, can I get a picture?" And I'm like, or like I'm in a conversation and I'm like, "Yeah, like let me just give me like 5 minutes." And sometimes they're like, "Okay, cool, great." And sometimes they're like, fine," and they'll just walk away. And it's not great. It's sort of disrespectful because, yes, we are entertainers and yes, we are in the public eye. And I do genuinely think that there's a responsibility that goes with that, and a willingness to be open. But at the same time, we're also human beings, and that person doesn't know what the conversation is about. If it's an important conversation, or if they're trying to help me work through something, or I could be talking to my therapist. Who know? Like nobody knows. And so it's like I think as long as people are respectful and treat me like a human and don't treat me like a prop or a property, then I try to engage them and be as kind as possible.
Respect.
Yeah.
R-E-S-P. No, I'm kidding. I'm not a
Yeah.
singer.
Aretha.
Wait.
Oh, all right.
I wish, dude. I sometimes do wish I would have tried to sing. Maybe in my afterlife. I'll meet you on the stage on one of those shows.
Yeah.
I'll try. I'll be like a
We'll be
supporting
like the
actor.
before. We'll be like the American Idol where they show the people that don't make it, but we have a fun time doing it.
We have
Yeah.
a fun 5 minutes with Ryan Seacrest. That's all we want.
Really.
You'd mentioned like curiosity and getting really excited about I gotta talk about Quiznos real fast though. Like sorry to like go backwards, but Quiznos. I mean, dude, way to take us back in time and like make all of us number one really hungry, number two nostalgic. I don't think I've heard that in decades, or like at least over a decade.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they had a great thing going, and I think they opened too quickly. There was a
Mm,
time where they were opening as quickly as Subways, and it was sort of like you want really good quality or you want really fast and inexpensive.
sure.
It was like either Quiznos or Subway, and then I
Mm,
think they just opened too quickly and they couldn't control the quality of everything, and then they
mm.
shut down. But yeah, that was a fun time. A cool thing about that too is my dad would get a bunch of products to test, so he would have companies that would
Food
send him
products.
a bunch of chicken or a bunch
Yeah.
of cheese or a bunch of bread, and it's like really good like ciabatta bread or like honey glazed this and all this. And so growing up, we would have the neighborhood kids would come over and they would always want to. We had a big field behind my house, so we would always play like football and soccer and whatever.
Mm,
And then everybody would always come over, and my mom would make us like these really big sub sandwiches, and they were like legit Quiznos style. Like my mom or my dad, they took it seriously, so they would like toast them just perfectly so the cheese is
mm.
melted, and so and then I would go to like my friend's house and his parents would make us like PB&J, and it's like so they always wanted to come over for lunch.
No, I love that. You said testing products for a sec. I was like, damn, you guys were the guinea pigs to like Quiznos's like failed ciabatta bread or the best.
I'm all, Dad, this chicken's great, but my
Yeah.
skin's turning green. Like
Yeah.
what's
Could you
going on?
imagine?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
listen,
I'd be like, great interview, and I'll turn around. There'll be like an eye, like in the back of my head. Like,
the third eye of Mike Manning. Could you imagine? Oh
I
my
can't.
gosh.
That's terrifying. That's terrifying.
Oh my God. Wait, listen, and you had just mentioned like some of those interactions with fans and such. The reason I said respect and started singing a little bit is because I feel like that's just the natural experience for someone like yourself. So remind you, if anybody's tuning in, including myself, when we find you in the gym on the 4 mile speed walking and lollygag, so long that you're not typing in the TV show notes in your phone, we're still gonna ask you for that picture because you're walking, you're not running. No, I'm kidding. Mike, I mean, listen, as we wrap up this conversation, first of all, thank you. It's like you being as vulnerable as you had been, not just with your family, but with your career and kind of those the ins and outs of like your best friend and what it was like to really go through. I keep thinking of this 5.5 month mark. You know what I mean? That could be the name of your episode. I don't know, but the 5.5 month mark of like that was it. Like you'd went out to LA, you did the thing, and you're like, shit, no work for 5.5 months, but I'm going to keep going, which is a perseverance from your dad. Right. And then you had also mentioned towards like the latter half of this conversation how your mom really plays into, I think, the optimism and excitement that you get for every little project. I would assume that your mom is the same way about every little thing that happens in her life too. So that's really cool. Then I have one question for you. When you think of impact, right? And especially when you think of all the advocacy work that you're going into now, or the give back Zoom calls that you're having with people that for a decade have been in this business or decades and are now you're helping them after they helped you. Where do you hope all of this goes if you had to give a glimpse into the future?
That's a good question. Yeah.
You're not get paid to ask them. I'm kidding.
I think that at this point in my career, I've been really fortunate to be involved with films that I hope will outlast me and will continue to have an impact on this world. One of the last films I did was a documentary about homeless kids, and because it was a good story, and because we were trying to do the right thing, um, we had people involved like Rosario Dawson and Jewel and Halle Berry and people that like I respect and are way up here at this upper echelon, Tiffany Haddish, John Bon Jovi. And so I truly think that that project is going to be one that continues to have an impact on the world. I was a part of another film that ended up helping to get a law passed about child abuse in our country, and that was one of my first films. And so I think of the films as like these little, like, I don't know, some people have kids and the kids are like what they leave, their legacy, that's what they leave behind, and their families and everything. I don't know if I'm gonna have kids, TBD, but even if I don't, I think of these movies as sort of like my kids sometimes. Like these are like the legacies that I'm gonna leave behind. Some people leave songs, some people leave pictures, some people whatever it is. And I think that if I can continue doing that and telling stories that matter to me and stories that I think will impact people. I just actually had a film that I produced release this week on Shutter. It's like on Shutter and AMC Plus, and it's called Slapface, and it's a horror film, but it has a huge anti-bullying element to it, and a lot of the reviewers are picking up on that and watching the film and saying, "Wow, I just turned this on because I thought I was getting a horror film about a witch that lived in the woods," and I ended the film with tears in my eyes and thinking about bullying and helping people and everything else. And it's like, yes, the film impacted them and entertained them and had a commercial, is having commercial success, but at the same time it's making them feel something about bullying and about trauma and grief and loss and really real human things that they're thinking about now. And so if I can continue to do that with my projects, then I will be a happy person.
That's one hell of a man of the hour. Mike Manning, we would have never known these things. Sometimes I think about it. I'm like, I'm glad I had locked you in for an hour. Kendra, thank you. Because there's so much substance to you. There's so much that meets the eye off the screen, right? And if you're listening, I hope you learned a lot about perseverance, about being happy where you are, having the calmness, right? Or reaching for the calmness after achieving so many different goals, no matter what trajectory you're on. And then also like to, go sit on some sadness about Quiznos. No, I'm kidding. But then, all, but with I mean, your gym therapy notes, everything that you had mentioned, I know will add value to people. So as I'm putting show notes in and having all these descriptors about where people can find you, your latest products that are still on the projects that are still on the air, what are you excited about for the rest of this year? And what can you give us a hint on?
Um, yeah, This Is Us is airing right now, and I have a really fun character on that, so that's great. A shout out to NBC and all of them. I just wrapped a film that I can now talk about called The Bellkeeper with Randy Couture, and that was really cool. I've loved Randy ever since he was a fighter before he turned into an actor, and and to be able to do stunts with him. There was a stunt that I did where he like threw me into the wall, and I'm like, wow, Randy Couture's kicking my butt. Like, this is awesome. And so that's coming out. There's a film that I did called The Way Out, and that's going to be doing the festival circuit pretty soon, where I play a boxer myself. I gained a bunch of weight for that one. And then everything else, just if people are curious to follow me, it's just my website, like mikemanning.info, I think, or Mike Manning on social media.
Look how easy that was. I don't even have to spell it out. It's going to be in the show notes. And cut. Do they say that after an episode? They do.
It's your episode. I don't know.
Well, I want to go off of what you do. What would you say if this episode was ending?
Uh, thanks for coming on. I don't know. And cut. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. Let's do that's a wrap.
That's what it is. Mike Manning, thank you for coming on. That's a wrap.